haunted house. Story 1. From 1998 to 2001, I lived in a small craftsman-style home in Laurel Mountains, not too far from Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Water. The home had a twin next door that had been extensively remodeled and expanded by the time we bought our place. The story goes that the property originally belonged to two brothers. And the brother whose house got a makeover had two sons. Our neighbor in the other house told us that the two boys were werewolves. I didn't learn about this part of the story until my husband told me later, after we both had experienced some strange things, which I will elaborate on shortly. When he told my husband about this, he invited him in for a tour of his home, and during the tour pulled back the carpet to show my husband a stone pentagram built into the slate of the floor. A month or so passed, and we got a really sweet rescue dog, a Sheltie. She was perfectly friendly, normal, and protective over my 7-year-old daughter. However, over the following months, she started doing some strange things. I would get up in the middle of the night to find her growling down the stairs at something. During the day, as I was watching TV or working in my studio, I'm an artist, she would stand between me and the door to the dining room and growl for an inordinate amount of time. Over the months, she began to get a little unpredictable. She would wet the carpet, which she had never done before, and eventually she would bite me. By that point, I was pregnant and scared to have a biting dog around a baby, so I took her to the ASPCA. During my pregnancy, I started sleeping in another room away from my husband as he snored like a freight train, and it was hard enough to get rest being big and pregnant. One night, I woke to something crawling up from the foot of the bed and over my feet and legs. I couldn't see anything and was so terrified that I couldn't even scream. I managed to put a hand up and grab the headboard of the old rickety double bed my mother-in-law had given us for our spare room, and I slammed it against the wall repeatedly. With that noise, I was finally able to scream, and whatever was on my legs disappeared. I ran to the hall to find my husband running to meet me, asking what had happened, and I didn't know what to say. That winter, a few months after the baby was born, I was sleeping in the room with the baby in his crib, and my mother was visiting. We had all been enjoying an evening in front of the fireplace, and the whole house was warm and toasty. We went to bed late, probably around midnight. I woke at 2 a.m. to the baby screaming, and when I tried to get up, I was so ice cold that I could barely move. My mom and husband heard the baby screaming and came into the room to see what was wrong. My husband said, "Why the hell is it so cold in here?" The door had been open the whole time. My mom took the baby out of the room, and my husband helped me to the hallway. Beyond the open door, the rest of the house was still toasty warm. Thank God we ended up moving out the following summer. Before we did, my husband said he'd spoken to the neighbor about our experiences, and he said, "Oh yeah, the 2 werewolf boys' father had killed them, and then himself, and the boys' ghosts roamed the 2 properties." Story 2. The new house on the Edmonton, we will call it the new house, is quite old, older than one can imagine it to be. But it is called the new house because every month there is a new family that comes to live in that house. And every month they move away. The new house on the Edmonton is a place that you definitely want to stay away from. It has been more of a fun experience for us as a neighborhood, watching all these families get spooked out and leaving too soon. But for us, it has been hilarious to see them all go. All families leaving one by one. Was the house haunted? Yes, it was. But why were we not bothered by it? Well, the answer was clear. When the Donald family moved here, as per routine, the first day of the Donald family was calm and collected. And then, the very next day, they saw their first apparition in the house. And the second day, things were moving fast for them. The Donalds were a weird bunch. They almost had no luggage when they came to the place. The first step they took was completely different. The things were placed differently, and they were into some very weird things. And we realized there was something more to them, and we soon realized it. The second week, during midnight, they did the ceremony of catching a ghost. They made sure that somebody watched so they could set up the live stream. And as they did, they continued the ceremony. And when they did, they turned out to smoke a weird herb, and what it did was mellow the ghosts, and it fell and rolled out over the front. They quickly jumped out on the ghost, and after a while, they revealed the true identity of the ghost. It was the real estate agent who would try to lure all these people out so he could scam them, and the company could get commissions from the house. It was the most hilarious scam we ever saw in the neighborhood, and we were sorry for those poor souls who fell for this stupid joke. Everybody still talks about people who fell for the ghost in the new house on the Edmonton. Story 3. I'm in my 20s and I'm a female, and I'll start my story with a little background. I grew up as an only child. My parents had my sister when I was 11. Before she was born, my dad rebuilt our bungalow into a huge 2-story house, so no one died in my new bedroom. Now, onto my experiences. The ages are round estimates. I'm mid-20s now. When I was 7, I started getting these nightmares about the concept of death. I would wake in the middle of the night crying for weeks on end, and then it would stop for a while before starting up once more. By the age of 10, this developed into a feeling of being watched and being unable to sleep, convinced that something, not someone, was watching me from a specific corner of my room. My new room, the one my dad built. Eventually, my dad ripped out that sectional wall to show me that there was a space there. I don't exactly know why, but there was a space all the way around to the stairs. He tried to turn it into a fun den area for me, but I hated it and refused to ever go in there. This continued. When I was about 12, I got my first smartphone. The iPhone was my dad's old one, but it worked just fine. That was until it got dark outside, and the phone would start typing random letters when I was texting someone or just typing. It only ever happened in that bedroom. As soon as I would exit the room, it would stop. I told my dad about it, and he said it must be damaged and bought me a new one for my 13th birthday. My dad believes in ghosts. He couldn't explain what was going on in that room. He bought me a new phone, but the one I just got was doing the same thing now. I thought I was going mad. Long after, I bought some candles from a witchcraft museum when we were on holiday. This was when I was 14. I used them to politely ask whoever or whatever was there to please leave the house peacefully. Somehow, this ended up working, and I was perfectly okay in that room again. I slept fine, and all of my phones, including upgraded ones afterwards, were fine as well. I moved out of the house when I was 20, and when I went back to visit my parents, I'd stay the night in my old room. Whatever was there when I was a child is back. The same corner, the same feeling, the same dark energy, the same creature. Except now I have an image that's burned into my memory despite never actually seeing it. It's a dark creature. It has a human-like shape, but is very muscular. It crawls around on all fours, legs bent behind it, almost wolf-like, but without a snout. It snarls and glares with dark red eyes and big black pupils. It has horns as well, big horns that curve back over its head. There's some type of red tinge to it, but I can't identify where it comes from. So there you go, that's my story. Believe me or not, it doesn't matter to me, but I do not go into that room anymore when I see my parents, not even in the daytime. Story 4. This story happened when I was 18 years old and a senior in high school. It was an ordinary night. My dad worked the night shift, so we all decided to sleep in my parents' room. I was with my younger brother, who was 15 years old at the time, my younger sister, who was 11 years old, and my mom. My parents' room was a small, purple, square-shaped room that also had a bathroom. The bathroom's door was across from the bed. My younger brother and I slept on my parents' bed, while my mom and my younger sister slept on the floor. Before sleeping, we all had a short conversation, and after that, we went to sleep. At 2 a.m., I was awakened by a strange sensation. As I opened my eyes, I had them fixed on the bathroom door, which was cracked open. To my surprise, I noticed a black figure that looked exactly like my younger brother. The figure stood there with his arms crossed, watching me. However, his eyes were shut. At that moment, I froze. I couldn't move from the bed and was scared that if he opened his eyes, they would be red or bloodshot. I decided to quietly turn my head to the other side of the bed to see if it was indeed my brother. My heart sank to my stomach when I realized that my brother was sleeping right next to me. So many thoughts raced through my head. Who was this person? Why was he here? How could he look exactly like my brother? I tried as hard as possible to sleep and ignore what I saw. A few minutes later, after opening and closing my eyes, I was shocked to see that the figure was now standing above me, still looking directly into my eyes, with his eyes shut. My eyes were wide open from the shock. I felt like I was going to die from a heart attack. It seemed like he was starting to open his eyes, which scared me so much that I closed my eyes and forced myself to sleep. Forcing myself to sleep worked, and the next thing I knew, it was morning. When I woke up, I headed to the living room and saw my mom. After holding it inside for a bit, I gave up and told my mom about the incident. I almost froze when she said she had seen the same exact figure and witnessed what happened. It was terrifying. We both saw the same black figure that looked exactly like my brother. It was as if he was my brother's twin. We lived in that house for 2 more years until we finally moved out. After the move, we told my dad about this story. Since he doesn't like hearing creepy stories, we had kept it a secret until we moved. He surprised us by saying that we were not alone. He had seen some strange things in that house as well.